Today here in India we are celebrating a festival called Rakhi, and it's a Sunday and I am feeling sick. Still I'm here making a video for you guys in a hope that at least it'll be beneficial for some of you. In today's video we'll go through all of these topics with respect to async await. Without further ado, let's get started. Starting with the intro, any function will be called async function if it has this keyword before its definition. Await lets you wait for an async call and execute the next line after the completion of that call. Now what relation does both of these has with promise? This function that you use just after the await will generally be a promise, and async, whatever it returns, will always be a promise. And in case let's say sometime you're not returning a promise from an async function, it will wrap it up in promise.resolve. So for example, you can see over here we are just returning a simple string, and what it is actually interpreted as is this. It always takes care of wrapping the return value with promise.resolve. Now you can see async, await and promise as a family. Let's say async and await are two happy couples. So async will always care for await, so await will always be inside an async function. If you try to use await outside the async function, it will cry and give an error. And let's say then they adopted a child named promise. Now async and await both require promise. In the sense, async will always return a promise and await will always wait on a function that returns a promise. And because promise belongs to the newer generation, it has the reach to newer technology and do some things that async await cannot. For example, promise.all and promise.trace. So in case of promise.all, this will wait for these two functions to finish. Doesn't matter which one finishes first, and then it will go on the next line. And the important thing to realize is both of these calls will start at the same point, and the await will move the control to the next line only after both of the calls are finished. Contrary to this, in case of promise.trace, both of these calls starts at a point, and as soon as one of these is finished, await will be resolved and it will move to the next line. Now can you guess why they named their son Promise? Because promise always promises some value, either in present or in future. Promises says I will return some value. Just like real life, all the promises cannot be fulfilled. So when a promise is not fulfilled, it is said to be rejected. So I have just written a dummy function over here. Let's see what it does. So what this function does is it returns a promise which resolves after a random time interval. So this mat.random makes sure that the time this function takes to resolve is random. So if I hit enter over here and then I call this function, okay, reopen this, you see it's pending over here. That means this promise has been called but it has not been resolved, and before resolving you just opened this and check this, so it will always show pending. In case I call the same function again and then wait for some time for this promise to resolve and then I open it, you see the status resolved. So now it will always show resolved. So this is something you need to take care of while using Chrome DevTools. So depending upon the time you check its value, whatever its value was at that time, it will remain there only. The value will remain exactly the same. So yeah, so you can see it is returning some value. So in case I don't do this and I say reject over here, then I'm calling the function. So it's pending. Oh, so it is rejected. Okay, if you open the status over here, it shows rejected. So that is how you can control the value a promise returns using resolve and reject. As promise is a kid, so it has some cool friends like all, race, reject, resolve, catch, then finally. Some of his friends got close to his father as well. For example, you can chain catch, you can chain then on any async function. So let's say I'm defining this function here and then I'm saying get process data dot then okay. What happened? Okay, so I think yep, so what happened is in Ajax promise we were returning reject, so we need to change that to resolve. Okay, now let's call the same thing. So you see, after the promise has resolved, it called the then. Okay, so first it printed first call, then this then, and then this then is called. Now async and await being parents has more experience than promise, so they make promise organized. For example, in this scenario, what you see on the left hand side is a get processed data function which only makes use of promises. So there is this ajax promise, and then you say catch, and then on the other hand, what you see on the right side is how promise behaves while it is with async and await. So you see synchronous looking code, await ajax, and then if an error is there, do this, otherwise continue over here. Now this try catch is something different, and the catch that we used over here is for chaining on the async function. This try catch is one of the benefits that you get while using async await. Now you might think await is something similar to dot then in case of promise, but it is not. How it differs is await stops the execution in the current function. So once the code reaches here, everything inside current function stops, and the code over here will continue its execution. Whatever you write over here will continue. But this doesn't happen in case of dot then. What dot then will do is only the function that will be passed as an argument to then will be executed after the completion of this call, and whatever is here will go on execution. So this is a difference. Await will stop the execution over here for the current function. On the other hand, dot then will only do whatever is passed to then as a function. Now implementation wise also there's a difference. That is, await makes use of generators. So I will not be explaining all about generators in this video, so let's take a basic example of generators. Okay, so generators help you iterate over something. For a basic understanding, just look at this function. So now make range iterator over here is a generator because we have used this star after the function keyword. What it's doing is it is creating another iterator over here every time you call this function. Okay, and that can be iterated over using .next. So that is the basic purpose of a generator. So here we have generated a generator, and then as I call this, it will generate next value, next value, next value, and so on. As the end is infinity, it will keep on going. That is how the generator works, and that is the behind the scene implementation for an await. Now some points that you need to be careful of while using await. So first is, do not confuse await with promise.then. Always try to use promise.all and raise wherever needed, because there's no new way you can achieve these functionalities. And dummy function behavior in DevTools that I already told you guys. So this function, when we run it in DevTools, the output that it gives, depending upon the time you look at the output, it may vary. For example, so if I open it right away, it might show pending throughout. Now we see ASDF, if I open, it will always show resolved. If in case I would have opened it before it being resolved, it will show pending throughout. Next is a class method can also be a sync function. I hope you have watched the previous videos on classes and methods. So that can also be an async method inside a class. And then if an awaited promise rejects, you can catch this by using try catch block or chaining .catch on the async function. Okay, we already discussed both of these ways. Then .then on an async function. You can also use .then. In the most cases you might not be requiring that, but still you can. Very important point here. Learn promises thoroughly. Even if you use async await all the time, promise is the base for them. You cannot avoid learning promises and use async await the best way possible, because they wholly depend upon promises. And async await will make your code readable, because it will look more like synchronous code, and the call stack will also improve because you'll be able to handle your errors better. You'll be able to use try catch block as we saw, which was not the case with promises alone. And then there are two articles that I came across while preparing for this video. So one is this one. This one talks about how someone can misuse async await. So trying to use await before each and every function they call inside async is not the right way. You should be able to logic upon where you need to call await, where not, or where you should be using promise.all or promise.raise for that matter. And there's one more video that I came across, that is this one. Is async await useless? So I'll save you some time because this video doesn't. Oh, we have an ad.
अंग्रेजों ने जाते जाते हिंदुस्तान को
So I'll save you some time. So that's about 20 minutes of time, because this video doesn't talk about anything much logical. If you see the comments over here, just wait and read through this comment and you'll get what I'm trying to say. I mean, I'm fan of these guys, but this video doesn't impress me. More on that, it looks like this is kind of a clickbaity video. So that's all for today, guys. And guys, please share, like, dislike, comment, appreciate, or whatever. Do whatever you like on this video. At least give me some feedback.